So I thought today we'd look at one of the skills that comes in very handy for an artist, and that is sketching. I'm going to go over a few little things that you want to practice whenever you're sketching, and then we're going to finish the lesson with a simple drawing so that you can get a chance to practice the skills that we're going to be discussing. So a few things to keep in mind when you're sketching is that first of all you want to start off by drawing really light. Um, Two reasons for that. Number one, if you want to make changes later on, you want to be able to erase any marks that you don't like. Also, if you press firmly, like here, and you try to erase, you can't, right? Because you're leaving what is called a ghost image. What's happening when you press firmly with the pencil, you're not only putting a mark on the paper, but you're also compressing the fibers of the paper. So when you try to get rid of that, you can get rid of some of the graphite, but you can't undo that compression in the paper. So you get these things. They're called ghost images. So if you get in the habit of drawing nice and light so that you can put the mark down on the paper without compressing the paper, when you have to erase, you don't get those ghost images. The second thing that I would recommend is to start with the bigger shapes. And then use the big shapes to help you figure out where other stuff's going to go. More often than not, students like to start with the details. Problem is, if you put the details in and they look awesome, but they're in the wrong spot, it's still going to look odd. So, start with the bigger shapes before you start putting in the smaller shapes, more smaller details like this. Okay? Use guidelines whenever you need them. So, if I'm drawing a human face, I'm going to start off very lightly, getting in the basic shape of the face, for example. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in some guidelines to kind of help me later on when I get ready to put in the eyes and the nose and the chin and the lips and the eyebrows and all of that. Okay? So use guidelines as often as you need to. And finally, try to do as much of the drawing as possible without erasing. We often spend way too much time erasing and not enough time drawing. So let's say that you made a mistake like that. Well, go ahead and try to correct the mistake without erasing it. Okay? Like so. So, like for example, if I put this eye and it's too close to the nose, just scoot it over. After I'm done with the sketch, I may go back and make my final adjustment. So like here, this eye looked a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and enlarge it just a little bit. Okay. So try to make your corrections without erasing. If you've drawn light enough, this is not a problem. Alright, so I'm going to demonstrate those techniques being used with this simple little drawing of Bart Simpson. So I have an image that I'm looking at right now. Whenever you're practicing these techniques, it's good to have something to look at. But you can also do it from your imagination. You can do it from drawing live objects. You can draw it from drawing photographs, as long as you're practicing the techniques. So the first thing you want to do is start off very lightly and kind of establish the bigger shapes. So from the picture that I'm looking at, I can tell that he has a very rectangular head, like so. And I'm using these choppy little lines like this. I'm not trying to make like one perfect line when I'm doing this. Okay, because remember, this is a rough sketch and I can make my adjustments as I go. His eyes are located right about the center of his head. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a guideline there. And he's looking that way. So I'm going to put in this guideline, but I'm going to have it come in a little bit more to the right. Okay, this is a 3/4 view, so I'm going to see a lot more of this side of his head, very little of this side of his head. So start with the big shapes, use guidelines as you need to. Okay, now we can start working on some of the details. So I'm going to go ahead and put the eyes in. He's got a little pupil right here and another one right about here. Again, that's an estimate. Now when I start to draw his eye, I'm going to practice drawing a pretty decent circle without relying on any special equipment. Okay. So you can see this is actually a really nice eye right here, but I can tell that this pupil is just a little bit on the small side. So I'm going to go ahead and make that just a tiny bit bigger. Again, I did that without erasing. On the next one, because of the way that his face is turned, this eye is actually overlapping this eye here, and this eye is going to look just a little bit smaller than this one because, again, we're seeing more of this side of the face and less of the other side. Sort of looks something like that. But I need to move this pupil this way so that it looks more centered. So I'm going to move this guy over just a little bit more. I'll erase that one later after I'm satisfied with the drawing. Okay. Now the nose is going to come right between these things. So, and it's basically a rectangle. You just got to round over the edges. And you got to estimate how big his nose is. So I'm going to estimate that. That's about the size of his nose there. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and make some changes. I'm going to move this line in just a little bit because it's too far away from the eye. So move that over like so. And this will become his upper lip right here. I'm going to extend this out. I think I'm going to go a little bit further. And he's got a spiky hairdo. So I'm going to put in one more guideline here, I think, right about here. And I'm going to use the top and the bottom guideline to help me figure out what his spike looks like. Okay, next I'm going to decide on the ear. So the ear is actually down. He's got a very small ear and it's kind of about the same level as his nose. So it's a relatively small ear, about 3/4 of a circle. And then he's got this little, it's like a curved T that makes up the inside of the ear, like so. This part of the head turns into the neck. And I'm actually going to move his mouth. It's a little too close to the back of the neck, so I'm going to move his mouth this way a little bit. And I'm going to bring his lower lip right here. And that's it. That's a basic sketch. But now I can take a minute and I'm going to make some changes. So this eye is closer to me, so I'm going to go ahead and darken this one up a little bit more. I can see it better. And this one's on the other side, so it's not, you don't see as much. And we're going to see the nose, so part of the eye is being blocked by the nose. So we're going to darken up this area here now that we've got our basic sketch in, and I'm going to keep this pupil here, and I'm going to get rid of this other one here. So because I drew lightly, it was pretty easy for me to get rid of that other one. If I'd have drawn hard, it would have been difficult to get it that clean. Now this to me looks too rounded. I think it needs to be just a little bit sharper. And his neck looks a little bit skinny, so I'm going to thicken it up a little bit. So you can see I'm actually making my adjustments with pretty much no erasing. And I think that'll do. That's a pretty easy sketch to start with. It'll give you a practice using the basic techniques. Remember, start off with the bigger shape. In this case, it's a rectangle. Use your guidelines as you need them. They'll help you line things up. Then start putting in the smaller shapes. Try to make your adjustments without erasing. And then once you're pretty much satisfied with the drawing, then you can clean it up a little bit, darken up the lines that you feel are really well done or that look correct to you, and then erase anything else. For this demo, I'm not going to erase the guidelines. Now, if I was taking this to a finished product, then I would clean this up really well, get rid of all this extra stuff before I did any of the painting and coloring or inking or anything like that. Okay? So, start off with something simple like that, and then challenge yourself and do something a little bit more difficult and a little bit more difficult, and focus on the techniques though, not the end result. Just keep practicing the techniques. Okay? Thanks for watching.